Welcome to the Fit as a Mama Bear podcast. I'm Shelby, a certified strength coach, nutrition coach, mama to two, and all-around health nut. This show is about a little bit of everything healthy, fit, and natural related. So if you're striving to smash goals, eat better, and feel better, and enjoy the occasional mom rant, this is the place for you. You're listening in to episode 10 today, where I'll be chatting with Dr. Chana Davis, a Stanford Genetics PHD, mom of three, and the founder of the blog Fueled by Science. All right, thanks for listening in today, everyone, as I sit down and pick the brain of an amazingly awesome researcher, Dr. Davis. The funny thing is, her and I met online and I became an avid follower of her Instagram page, mainly because she's a scientist, and I fully respect that. I adore people like her because reading research reviews kind of puts me to sleep. So having someone I can bounce questions off of and ideas and ask for advice when I'm a bit overwhelmed with the entire world of nutrition, and who also believes in healthy eating, is amazing. So we kind of go back and forth on the gram, and I truly love her content. Check her out. Before we get into today's topic, and which I'm really excited about, to be honest, although I do have 1,001 questions for, and we can only answer so many. Dr. Davis, why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself, how you got where you are, and give a brief summary on why you believe healthy food choices are crucial, especially when it comes to our kids.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a lot of questions to answer for question number one, but let's go. A bit about myself and how I got to be where I am. So I guess I consider myself sort of like you, mom first and foremost. I have three kids, a boy who's 8 and twin girls who are 3.5. And as you know, once you become a mom, everything else kind of pales in comparison when you sort of your self-identity. Before having kids, I probably would have said first and foremost, I'm a scientist. So now I'm a hybrid of the two. I've always loved genetics. Even in high school, that was clear it was going to be my focus. I did my undergraduate in genetics here in Vancouver, where I'm from, at UBC. And then I moved to California, did my PhD in genetics at Stanford. And I met and married a fellow science nerd and then dragged him back to Vancouver. So after we had our first, we decided to move closer to my family. We decided. So no, I joke that it was part of the prenup that he had to be willing to move back to Vancouver, even though it was tough for this very sun-loving beach volleyball player to move up here. Anyways, it's been great in Vancouver, but there isn't as much biotech up here. That's kind of what I was doing previously. After my PhD, I worked at Genentech in cancer research, particularly on the personalized medicine side of it, so pairing a drug with a diagnostic. My first job up in Vancouver, I worked at Genome BC, a research funder, so looking at opportunities for genomics and personalized medicine. So I did that for a while, and then I got pregnant with twins. And after they came along, I thought maybe, I don't know if I want to go back to doing what I'm doing. I also turned 40 around that time. So it was really just a reflecting on what's important to me that brought me into this new chapter of my career. So this new chapter of my career is, my tag or handle is Fueled by Science. And really I have two different focuses that are very much overlapping. So one is to support, just very broadly, to support people and especially parents in making science-based, fact-based decisions. I see a lot of my friends struggling with, with fears, basically, that getting messages from media that they should be, oh my God, there's arsenic in my, oatmeal, or my kids' rice cereal. Should I stop feeding them that? Or all of these fear messages that we get, and it's hard to know what to believe. And you just feel paralyzed. So I want to help people make science-based decisions. So that's one, very broadly, science-based decision-making for everyone, and especially for parents, because that's who I assort with. And then secondly is just plant-based nutrition. So I happen to have been raised vegetarian, and then I shifted towards vegan in my 30s. And then I've sort of been back and forth between vegetarian and vegan. So right now I'm plant-based and my kids are vegetarian. And I want to help other people who are interested in being more plant-based but have concerns such as, am I going to get enough protein? Am I going to get enough iron? How do I meet my needs without meat? I want to help people to do that. And I don't want to see people, holding back from going more plant-based because of nutritional concerns, because those can be addressed.
I love that. We personally eat Well, that's a lie. I eat very plant-based, and my husband eats the exact opposite of me. He
Oh,
really
yes.
can cook, but it makes it kind of funny. My girls are awesome eaters just because that's all they kind of know. But it's true, even as a nutrition coach, you're bombarded with messages about everything that is wrong with food. And it's petrifying and it's hard to kind of sort through everything. And then when you become a mom, it makes it 100 times worse because you
Yes.
just want your kids to be healthy. And there's about 82,000 paths to that.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of people want you to buy their products. They try and make you buy their products by making you scared of other products.
Yeah. And it's overwhelming, I think.
Yeah. And so just one quick word on like your last question. I think the last part of the first question was why are healthy choices important? I mean, when I think about, I joke that my job is chief nutrition officer of the household. When I think about that job, one of my roles is literally fueling the growth of my children. But the second and equally important role is shaping their palates and shaping their mental concept of what a meal is.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you mentioned palettes. It's not even funny because that's one thing I rant about quite frequently in my house is that you only have so much time to me to kind of shape their taste buds and get and see what they enjoy. And if it can go so many other ways, but if they just get used to all the healthy things, then they'll gravitate towards them.
Totally. Yeah. No, I had a conversation. My husband is pescatarian and he loves dairy. And so it's a bit of a sore point sometimes because I'm becoming more and more ethically uncomfortable with dairy, but yet he takes a very firm stance that we will have cheese in this house. And so I provide my kids with both vegan cheese and cow cheese. And so they get a taste for vegan cheese, right? And so my son actually prefers vegan cheese, and he doesn't understand. I mean, he'll eat both, but he sees no problem with it, where my husband is literally spitting it out and disgusted by it.
Yeah, we are in the exact same situation because I'm now dairy free. I never used to be, so I think that's a little bit of a kind of a hard adjustment for everyone in the household. But it's not not that I'm fully against dairy. I just don't see it that it needs to be there, I guess, is the biggest thing. Is it's just not a complete need. And so we have both cheeses. Also, my husband is a really, really big dairy person. And so every so often we go into it and I have to remind him why you can get around the dairy thing. Like it's not crucial for kids to grow up drinking bottles of milk.
Yes. Yeah, my kids drink soy milk almost exclusively. But so my husband, it's kind of convenient. He's usually out of town. And so I get to basically offer mostly non-dairy during the week, but occasionally, and not exclusively. And then on the weekends, if he's sitting there having life cereal with cow milk, they want to have some of what he's having, and so they can have it. I don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but they just view soy milk and cow milk as just two different options. They don't really think about, one is inferior, and so they definitely have a taste for soy milk because that's their main food, but they also enjoy it and want to have what he's having.
We're trying to find a little bit of a balance right there right now, just with my oldest wanting to eat daddy's food. And me eye twitching a little bit in the corner.
Yes, totally.
So it's a little bit of a balancing act in our house, I think.
Yes.
So why don't we get into the biggest topics today? So as I mentioned, we are going to talk about protein needs and kids and kind of set the record straight on what they really need. And one of the reasons why I asked Dr. Davis on here is because she gives a new perspective and genuine knowledge to questions everyday mamas have. And one of those questions is always, always, always about protein. So protein in kids is a hot topic. And while I'm all for kids developing and boosting their immune systems and growing, I also don't think that they need to be pounding back chicken breast and broccoli every couple of hours. So what is your stance just chatting about why kiddos need protein?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is actually a great question to sort of start with because, so let me just tell you first of all, what protein does in your body. So first of all, protein is a major actual building block of your body. So what's your body made up of? Your body is mostly water, but then the next biggest chunk is actually protein. And within those proteins, which proteins are in your body as building blocks. Your muscles have a lot of protein in them, but also your skin, your blood, and other parts of your body have a lot of protein in them as well. Your number one protein, just by the numbers and by mass in your body, is collagen. So the protein in your skin. And that's the most abundant protein in your body. And myosin in muscles is the next most abundant, followed by hemoglobin in your blood. So proteins are literally building blocks of your body in the case of collagen, and myosin building muscles. But they also have a second role, and I kind of sort of a funny picture that I paint is they're sort of like little Oompa Loompas inside your cells. So inside your cells, they do all sorts of amazing jobs. They're involved in your cell membrane and in deciding which things can enter the cell and which can exit the cell. They are involved, enzymes are a type of protein that are involved in transformations inside your cell, catalyzing chemical reactions. They are antibodies or proteins. They are hormones, or building blocks for hormones or being hormones directly. So they serve these little magical functions inside your body, but they're also like the bricks and mortar of your body.
So they do when you think everything to some extent.
Yeah. And I think just from biological perspective, I think it's quite telling to appreciate that, DNA is the genetic material. It's the information molecule in your cells. And, DNA is sort of, the cornerstone of life, and that's what you get from your parents. And what does DNA do? It is basically a recipe book for proteins. And that is sort of the underlying basis of all life is DNA encoding proteins. And proteins, they're the ones that get the job done in your body.
Okay. I like the Oompa Loompa visual. That's super helpful, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And so why do we need protein? So, when you're growing, of course, if you think of the bricks and mortar role, of course, you need more bricks and mortar. You need protein to build that body, which is why sort of relative to their weight, children need more protein than adults. So protein needs, we always talk about needs proportional to your weight, or grams of protein per pound that you weigh, or grams of protein per kilogram that you weigh. And so children need proportionally more than adults because they are growing. But everyone, even adults, when they're not growing, they still need protein. The reason they need it is because your body is constantly recycling. Even within your cells, you do recycling of old proteins and build new ones. And you also just recycle whole tissues, like the way that that your hair falls out, which has keratin proteins, and you grow new hair. There's sort of cellular recycling happen. And for that reason, even adults who are not actually growing need to replace their protein losses.
I love that. So the best way I ever had it explained to me that kind of stuck in my head is that there is a protein sink, and it basically does not have a plug in it. So you constantly have to be filling the sink with water or with proteins and keep taking them in so that you keep replenishing your stores, basically.
Right.
Because we're always turning over, we're always using them, they're always going somewhere.
Yeah. But I think a number that I think a lot of people don't appreciate is that you actually have because you're constantly recycling, you actually have quite a robust pool of protein building blocks. So the building blocks of proteins are amino acids, right? So you can think of a protein as basically beads on a string, and all of those beads are different amino acids, and there are 20 of them. So those beads are floating around in your blood and in your cells because you're constantly breaking them down and recycling. And so you actually have, an average adult would have about 100 grams of beads in their body at a given time.
Wow.
And knowing this, so that's actually less than that. So this is for your average 70 kilogram male. That amount of protein that's just already available because you're sort of a snapshot of mid-recycling helps you appreciate that, you can go a day without eating any food, right? You've got these building blocks in you. And you're not going to necessarily break down muscle just because you've got those building blocks available. And also when people are obsessing about, having a complete protein, you have to have every essential amino acid at every meal. You don't, because you have this pool, this bag of beads that's in all your cells and it's in your blood. And so you already have a big buffer.
And not to mention you have you don't need to have every amino acid every single meal, because you do have multiple meals a day. You do tend to balance out if you eat a varied diet.
Exactly. But if you're thinking about, but what about the protein that I'm trying to build at this moment? I need to fuel that protein growth. No, you don't, because you have this pool because of the constant state of recycling that your body is in.
So there's always some floating around.
Yes, there's 100 grams of it.
Deficient.
There's a lot of it
in an
adult. 100 grams or so in an adult. Yeah, that's a lot.
All right. So growing children need protein simply because they're growing is the biggest thing. They're going to need a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a specific amount that they need to achieve their growing needs?
Mm-hmm. So for adults, the typical baseline number that you'll hear is about 0.8 grams per kilogram that you weigh, or about 0.4 grams per pound that you weigh. For children, when you look at the actual, scientific studies that estimate the needs for children, what they do is they take the adult need and they do some calculations that, let's just assume that they have, like, for basic cellular functions, you have the same needs as adults, but because you're growing, let's add some on top of that to support how much bone and how much skin and everything that they're growing. And so the number that's out there for children is, where did it go? I think it's 0.45. So it's maybe 10 to 20% higher, proportional to their weight. That's sort of the official number. And now I feel like I need to pull up the official number. I think it's 0.45. It's a little under per pound. So a little under half of a gram.
I'd like to just remind listeners, not readers at all, that is, again, per pound. So your protein needs are relative to how much you personally weigh. There's not one generic for females, for kids, for males. It goes based on your own personal body weight. Okay, so just one thing to keep in mind.
So that's the official recommendation. However, if you look at, the number hasn't really been updated in, I would gonna say, maybe a decade. If you look at through the latest literature, scientific studies, I did that relatively recently, and I found one study that was using a different technique, and it came up with a considerably higher number, closer to 0.7 grams per pound. So not quite double, close to double that, but it was a study with only 7 children. And it was a study that used a technique that may be more accurate, but it was a very small study. So for my personal conclusion is that somewhere in between that is probably a good number. So let's say, take for example, my boy weighs about 70 pounds, and I'm going to take about, say, 2/3 of his weight. So if he weighs 70 pounds, between 40 and 45 grams a day. My twins, they weigh about 35 pounds, and so they might want 20 grams of protein a day.
Okay, so fairly basic. I know it's funny when I think about, because I used to coach figure competitors and bodybuilders, which is a whole other realm of life.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of the things you focus on at that time is hitting their protein intake so they get bigger. And it's just, I love going back to kids because, yes, they need more calories because they're growing, but it doesn't always necessarily have to come from protein. It's still relative to their body weight.
Yes. And in fact, when you talk about protein needs, another way to look at it is what percentage of calories. And again, because children, they do need more protein per weight, but they also need more calories per weight. So the percentage of calories stays the same. It's actually only between 10 and 15% of calories.
Okay. Yeah. So it's low.
Yeah.
Compared to bodybuilders.
Yeah. So bodybuilders are going to be aiming for 20 to 30%, right?
Yeah. Sometimes even higher. It gets interesting. So it may sound like a lot, but I think one of the things moms freak out a bit about, and I do want to touch on this, is no one wants to grab a scale and weigh out their plant-based proteins all day.
Yes.
So how can they kind of find a balance to know how much their kids need or are getting?
Yeah, I actually have an article on this, and I actually like thinking about the percent. I don't know. It just depends which way you like to think about it. So let's do this in percents, because it's interesting to think about this. If you look at whole foods and you say what percent of their calories are from protein. Now, this is where it's really useful to just think like a biologist. If you're eating a living organism, every organism on the planet has the same works in the same way. They have DNA, and that DNA encodes protein. So if you're eating a living organism, you are eating protein, right? Okay. Plants can't survive without protein. So all plants have protein. The exception, though, is, so here, what I want to say is that if you're eating predominantly whole foods and living organisms, right, all of them are going to have protein. So basically every living organism, and even rice. So again, if our target is 10 to 15% protein, even rice, which is a relatively low protein food, white rice is slightly below 10% of calories from protein, but brown rice is slightly above 10% of calories from protein. If you look at quinoa, that's maybe 15% of calories from protein. So let me just walk you through percents of calories by food. Whole grains tend to fall between 10 and 15%. So if you're eating a whole grain, you're eating like in the right protein range. If you're eating beans, you're eating closer to 20-25% of protein. You're eating above your target range.
Okay.
And so the way that I think about it is if you eat mostly foods that are in your target range, like again, even if your kid ate only quinoa, they would get enough protein.
You're going to balance out.
Yeah. So just the key is to minimize how many foods you're eating that are really low in protein, right? And so which foods are actually, it's harder to find the foods that are below this 10 to 15% than it is to find foods above it. Again, in the range, you've got whole grains, and above the range, you've got like your legumes and beans and tofu and so on. So which foods are low in protein? It's worth knowing that. And the answer there is fruit. So fruit is only about 5% protein. So I'm not saying don't eat fruit. I'm just saying when you're eating fruit, you have to sort of be aware to balance it out with, again, so an all fruit diet would not be a good thing. But, even whatever, 30% fruit is fine, as long as you're balancing that with beans and nuts and in specific whole grains that happen to be on the more rich side. But if you're eating only fruit plus white rice, you're going to be in trouble.
So I'll make a note to my kids that they cannot actually live off of an only fruit diet.
They cannot.
I really think that they would try if given the chance, to be perfectly honest. We have some serious fruit addictions in this house. Now,
it's great. Actually, I love having twins as a scientist because
I bet.
they have very different tastes. And one of them, indeed, she would love to live off of fruit. Although thankfully we found some bean salads she likes. Her sister, on the other hand, she'll have a broccoli fest with me. She'll just grab the broccoli, dip it in the sauce, and go to town. So
it'd be neat to see the differences.
Yeah, they're pretty dramatic. It really reinforces to me how much of our, parents really are working with a different children and different challenges because of those inherent tastes. And I see, like, it would be easy to say, oh, just feed your kid beans. Like, well, my kid doesn't like beans. Again, it's going to be, you might have to work a little more with some kids, but you can always find some non-fruit choices that do work.
That's true. I think my girls went through a phase where they were obsessed with broccoli and cauliflower, like obsessed. And cauliflower, I think, was like $8 a head at the time. You can't say no to your child when they're asking for cauliflower.
Yes.
And it got to the point that they were fighting at the dinner table over who was getting more. And I was like, I'm going to film this, because if children are fighting over broccoli, this is just hilarious.
That's amazing. How are you preparing it?
So cauliflower, they both love cauli rice, or roasted in the oven with like a curry powder on top.
Yes.
Really, really random. Broccoli, they will eat any possible way you imagine. So I don't personally like it raw. I'm not sure why. Both my girls will eat it raw, but they prefer it boiled with lemon or steamed with lemon. Yeah. That's their favorite.
The other bean that both of my girls, green vegetable, is green beans. They both love it.
We love them.
We usually serve it with peanut sauce, but.
Yeah, no, green beans are a favorite in this house too. They'll just walk away. They love them raw, actually, because they're crunchy. So they.
Yeah. I should mention that peas are surprisingly high in protein. A lot of people don't realize that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So those are a go-to. They're not quite in the same league as edamame, but they're pretty good.
So I guess what it comes down to when we're talking about protein in kids is quality versus quantity then, if we look at the actual amounts in food. So yes, they can get enough protein from non-dairy sources if you choose quality foods. Am I correct?
Okay. Honestly, when it comes to protein, I think we should focus on, so I guess I'm not sure exactly what you mean by quality. I agree in general, focusing on high quality foods is a wonderful thing to do. But when it comes to meeting your protein needs, as long as you're getting enough total protein, you are going to be meeting your essential amino acid needs. So when people talk about, plant-based proteins are inferior, they're not complete, yada, yada, that's what I think of when I think of quality of protein. Okay. So when I think of quality, I think of two things: the distribution and amounts of the essential amino acids, and number two, the digestibility and absorption of those proteins. So it's true, there are some differences between plant and animal sources when it comes to the distribution of essential amino acids and the digestibility, but those differences are relatively minor. So whey protein, for example, people talk about whey protein is the best, it's the most complete, and bodybuilders love it. And it's true. Whey does have a very good score when it comes to your distribution of essential amino acids. But even though proteins and soy or whatever, actually soy is pretty much the same as whey, but most plant proteins like pea, if you got pea protein powder, for example, the actual distribution of amino acids would be a little bit worse than whey, but it's not worse enough that it actually means anything. It's like, okay, so this one amino acid is a little bit lower than the rest. It doesn't mean I'm going to become deficient in it. There's no, what I hear, what rubs me the wrong way is when people talk about missing amino acids. There are no amino acids missing from any organism on the planet. We all use the same. Exactly. Right? The analogy I think of is that every class in school has a shortest kid. Every protein has a shortest amino acid. It's not missing. It's there. It's just there always has to be a shortest kid. And when you look at plant proteins, the shortest kid might be a little bit shorter than the shortest kid in a meat protein, but it's still there, and you could.
But so it kind of comes back to the same. As long as you're eating more of a varied diet, you're going
diversity.
to all of your proteins, whether it's dairy or plant-based or meat.
Yeah.
You're going to hit them if you just keep a nice variety of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it can be done either way. You can rock protein through dairy. You can rock protein through plant-based options. Just go with a variety so you hit all of your amino acids.
Breaking it up here for a minute to chat quickly about today's sponsor, Perfect Supplements. Perfect Supplements is my go-to for any and all superfoods. I personally keep on hand spirulina, moringa, and chlorella powder to give my smoothies a boost. But my most recent obsession is their bone broth powder. I love making my own bone broth, but I can't deny that it is time consuming. I do like to have some on hand though for whenever my girls are sick, we're coming down with something, or we just need that immune boost. Perfect Supplements now has a bone broth powder, and all you have to do is combine it with hot water. It is amazing. Weirdly enough, I totally use this in my girls' chocolate smoothies. It froths them up and they love them if you mix it with some cacao. But that definitely sounds a little bit odd for most families. The bone broth powder tastes amazing. Just add it into water while you're boiling rice, adding it into a soup or a stew or chili, or if you're super sick, just heating some with some hot water, putting a little bit of salt and pepper in it, and drinking it soup-like. It is amazing. So exclusive to Fit as a Mama Bear listeners, Perfect Supplements is knocking off 10% your entire order if you use the code MAMABEAR10. Just head over to www.perfectsupplements.com/MamaBear10 and save some money while boosting your nutrient intake.
Yeah, just quickly on dairy. So in terms of grams of protein per cup, so dairy is, one thing that I'll say in favor of dairy is it's convenient way to get a lot of protein, also a lot of vitamin D and calcium. The reality is, which plant protein is best. Soy is just, it is leagues better than all the other plant-based proteins. And the reason is it has the exact same amount of protein as dairy. It has the exact same amount of calcium. It has the exact same amount of vitamin D. It also is supplemented with vitamin B12. So for all those nutrients that you're turning to dairy to get, soy has them all. Period.
And for anyone who has a lot of questions about this, I know you have a lot of links regarding soy and quality and how it actually breaks down. So I'm going to leave those in the show notes because I love reading those because it's a crazy hot topic right now about how soy is quote unquote terrible for you.
Yes.
In reality, you have dispelled that myth entirely, and I love reading those. They are absolutely fantastic. So for anyone who is on the fence about soy, please go check out the links in the show notes because they will, I don't want to say completely change your mind, but they are very eye-opening, and I loved reading them.
Yeah, I will say that, some people say, oh, what about soy allergies? And, you could say that about anything. There are far more people allergic to dairy than allergic to soy. So
quite a few.
If you are allergic to soy, that, I feel sorry for you.
Don't eat soy then.
First of all, and second of all, don't eat soy. But probably your second best choice would be oat milk because it's more nutritionally dense. And then all of the nut milks, they are a distant third. The thing that the nut milks are good for, if you buy a fortified one, is they will give you B12 and vitamin D and calcium because they add them. So I just think of them as basically vitamin water.
Okay, so when it comes to trying to shop for a non-dairy milk, what would you look for on the label?
Yeah, I would read the label to see whether it's fortified. Look at the minerals and the mineral content and see, did they add vitamin D? Did they add calcium? Did they add B12? Because if you're plant-based, those are helpful things to have. And if you're not eating dairy, those are helpful things to have.
And I'm going to just keep you on this dairy topic because it's obviously a hot one of mine since I've been dairy-free for, oh my God, it's a year and a half, 2 years now. When it comes to yogurt, because that's another one, that's a really big one that moms go to for kids.
Yeah.
Quick, it's simple, it's easy, and they're getting all of those healthy nutrients.
Yes.
What would you swap in for yogurt? Now, I'm a coconut yogurt fan just because I you know, personally, I consume coconut yogurt, but it doesn't have protein. So,
you know, the reality is taste-wise, I think coconut is your best option. Nutritionally, soy is probably your best option, although they're usually highly sweetened. There are some unsweetened soy ones that are okay, but I find the soy ones taste a bit just funky.
Okay.
But again, it's a matter of taste. I would just say, you know, when your kids are young, there's an opportunity to expose them to it. You know, they're probably going to be less biased and more accepting than I am. And I have done some non-dairy testing with my kids, and generally the opinions are all over the map. I actually brought in a neighbor kid once along with my son and my twins to do a tasting, and we actually wrote down our taste. But yeah, there are some of them that literally people are spitting them out, and then the other person is like, oh, this is good. So it's just hit or miss with them. So it's worth trying. I would look at basically when I'm shopping for yogurt, I look at the grams of protein and I look at the grams of sugar. And if your sugar is off the charts and so I like unsweetened coconut milk, but you just have to know that that's not going to be a protein source. But again, you don't need yogurt as a protein source. The soy milk is basically our no-brainer, because again, if my kids have a cup or two a day, that's 10 to 15 grams of protein, and they only need 20 grams in a day. So when I did that math, I thought, oh my God, are they getting too much? Because they could cover their protein needs in their milk alone, right?
With the accumulation of everything else.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's fun. So then how would I know if my kid's getting enough protein? Let's talk about protein deficiency and the fear that comes with that, because I think that's a fear-mongering message too, is that if you don't do this, you're not going to get enough protein and everything terrible is going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I've seen this. There's a physician I follow on Instagram. I forget her name now, but she had this sort of humorous post where there's a picture of a bunch of empty beds. Like, this is the protein deficiency ward. It's basically unheard of. You know, the only time that you see protein deficiency in our planet is in people who are malnourished. So people who are not eating enough calories, period.
Completely. Like, just in general, they're not ingesting enough.
Exactly. So for that reason, you know, I think that it's most important to just get healthy food in your kid, period, that has some nutritional density. You know, a lot of kids don't, you know, you feel like, oh man, it takes them half an hour to down, 50 calories. So, you know, with my kids, I think it's just helpful to focus on calorie dense foods. And so again, giving your kids rice cakes, that's fine. But if they're going to spend 15 minutes eating one rice cake and get 13 calories, I'm not really into that. I'd rather give my kid nuts that they're going to down 100 calories in 5 minutes. So I'm all about, because my kids just want to get out there and play. I literally have to drag my son inside, force him to sit down, and when can I go play? Am I done yet? When can I go play? When can I go play?
Oh my gosh.
And that's my kids' mindset. So I just want to give them the most calorie dense foods, and then I know they're getting their bases covered.
So that's funny, because for us, my girls are foodies and ask for a snack every 30 seconds. So I think I counted the one day and we had 9 snacks. 9.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I supposed to come up with 9 snack ideas a day, guys?
Yes.
But so they're crazy foodies, but I'm actually the exact same. So we focus more on calorie dense and nutrient dense foods. We love like I said, they're fruit fiends. I'm not going to sit them down with just a plate of a couple of vegetables, because that's not going to tide them over for very long. Yeah. There has to be more to it than that. So again, like, they actually really like rice cakes for some reason. They call them rice pops. I don't know. But if they're going to have one, they're going to have some with a bunch of nut butters.
Yes.
All sorts, and hemp hearts on them, so that there's actually some sort of sustenance in there. It's kind of our go-to.
For sure.
So what are, aside from soy milk, because I know you're a soy milk fiend, what are some other staples when it comes to feeding your kids protein?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's the whole grains, and those are a very underappreciated source of protein. I mean, my oatmeal, My son has 2 pieces of this, like we buy this super seedy bread from Cobb's Bread. It has like tons of seeds and tons of fiber. I think it's almost 5 grams of protein a slice, and he'll have 2 slices in the morning. And if you buy whole grain bread, it's not, if you look at the protein content, you can actually get some that have now I'm trying to think, is it 5 grams? Maybe I'm mixing up my fiber and my protein, but
so what would you look for?
I will say that whole grains are a very underappreciated source of protein.
What would you look for?
And that's something you can get your kids to eat. For bread, honestly, I read the labels and I look at the protein content, and I look at, I look for no added sugar, just because, the reality is the worst case in terms of breads are going to have like 2 grams of sugar added. So it's not huge, but I do feel like it's shaping their palate if they expect bread to be sweet.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one. What would you look for?
The main thing I look at when I shop for bread is the fiber content.
Okay. So what's a good fiber content?
You look at the ratio of total carbohydrates to fiber. So if a slice of bread has 20 grams of carbohydrates, you want to have at least 2 grams of fiber. So if you divide the carbohydrates by 10, you want the fiber to be at least that number.
Okay. And that's going to help them get a better protein source.
That's just, in general, that will be linked, because it just means you're getting, the fiber is, fiber and protein are obviously different things, but they tend to be, you can look at the protein directly, but I think the fiber, to me, those are equally important metrics when I'm shopping for bread, is how much protein and how much fiber.
Okay. So we have bread, oatmeal, quinoa is another one. What other grains do you
no, we serve a lot of quinoa. So I'd say, in the morning, they get a bit of protein from, again, they either have oatmeal or whole grain bread, so they get a bit of protein there. And then lunch, my husband always criticizes my lunches because he's like, I want a hot lunch and I want it to be one thing. Whereas my kids' lunches have like 5 things. It's like, it has a little container of tofu, a little container of edamame, a little container of, some kind of whole grain leftover from last night where I threw in a couple of beans into the quinoa. It has whatever seeds and nuts. So their lunches are usually just little bites of, again, something. There'll be like probably a grain left over from last night. There'll be little bits of vegetables and hummus, I guess, is a big one that we do during the day. Lunch. And then the whole grain. So it'll be, again, we'll use the whole grain breads, or or I'll pack some tofu, or I'll use nut and seed butters. I pack my kids are funny. They actually will do shots of hemp hearts. So I'll sometimes,
God,
because you can't pack, nuts in the lunches. So I try to do a trail mix, but I do like a seed trail mix, and they'll literally just like, my son will just like knock it back out of the little package. It's hilarious.
That's fantastic. When it comes to nuts, then, so if we look at nuts, because I always use nuts more of as a healthy fat versus a protein.
Yeah.
But what would be the nuts highest in protein?
It's the ones that would be the ones. Well, it depends if you're counting grams or if you're counting proportionally, because of course the more fattier nuts, the lower the protein proportionally. So like, we tend to use just, I think all nuts are. I don't think the difference is huge enough to make a choice based on that. But I do think seeds are very much underappreciated as a protein source, but it's just, you've got to find your ways to incorporate them. So sorry, but I think both seeds and nuts are roughly equally good protein sources, but seeds are school friendly, which is the awesome thing about them. And that's sort of, we have an after dinner snack if my son's still hungry before bed. Probably 5 days a week, he'll make his own trail mix. And we include walnuts for the omega-3s. We include almonds. They love the tamari almonds. They're a little bit salty. Yeah. We'll throw in peanuts just because they're cheap. And then cashews. And we add a bit of cranberry or something. They choose like 3 or 4 nuts and then like 1 sweet add in.
That's actually our bedtime snack too.
Yeah, it's so easy because you don't have to cook, right?
It is. And you know what? My toddler's obsessed with nuts. Like she's a nut fiend. It doesn't even matter what kind of nut. She just loves them. So whenever she asks for a snack and she's already just had one and I'm like, do we really need another snack? Yeah. She's like, I'll just have some walnuts, Mom. Like, what kid asks for this?
Yes. They are very happy. I actually I need to take a picture of this for Instagram. I just converted the bottom 2 drawers of our wine fridge into a bedtime snack drawer,
Oh my
including
God, that's so smart.
tons of jars of nuts. Yeah.
We have a bulk barn drawer.
I'm really proud of myself.
That's right beside our freezer with all of our jars. And they can win and get their own too. You just have to be careful because my youngest is 1.5 years and that gets a little messy.
Yes. No, I keep the seeds out of that. Like I focus on the bigger ones that are going to be easier to clean up when they inevitably spill.
Oh, I know. When you spill chia seeds and your heart cries a little bit, they're a little bit pricey too, and they just don't clean up at all. But chia seeds are another one that my girls would just eat all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome because they are. I've just been really into omega-3s, and they are one of the most potent sources.
Beautiful, because we have chia pudding probably 2 days.
Awesome.
Oh, there's that. All right. Well,
so sorry, we didn't finish go-to sources. I just a word on beans, so that's another go-to source. We incorporate. Actually, we used to have like bean quesadillas a lot.
That sounds delicious.
Lunch. Yeah, and we use beans a lot. We do actually because we were in California when my son was born, and we had a nanny from El Salvador, so she made rice and beans for him, and she made just homemade like bean soups and like Cuban black bean soup, just traditional rice and beans. We do quinoa and beans. We do
your kids love quinoa. I've seen that quite a few times on your Instagram.
We do an awesome white bean dill salad. That's probably my most popular recipe. We do chickpeas. I don't actually have a chickpea salad, but we eat a lot of hummus.
So do we. That's another obsession actually of my toddler's. She has some weird food preferences, to be perfectly honest, when I say them out loud.
No, they're awesome.
They make me smile.
Have you ever mixed pesto into your hummus? It's really good.
Yes, I have. Yes. As long as I've made it, because most pestos have Parmesan, so I have to
I found some vegan brands, actually.
Have you? Okay, we don't. I haven't been able to find any in our stores, so I do make it myself without parm. It's just sometimes you're in a rush and that's not going to happen. But
this one it's not even labeled vegan. It's funny.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have done pesto hummus. That's a popular one.
Yeah.
Which is color.
So the other tip about protein is to try whole grain pastas. I know they're kind of hit or miss, but like again, I haven't had a huge amount of success with like the quinoa pasta and the black bean pasta. Those have not been huge successes. But sometimes just the whole wheat ones, if you use like a creamy sauce or a thick tomato sauce, they will accept the whole wheat. Just the wheat ones, and those have a lot more protein than the refined ones.
We love the quinoa noodles. Those are probably our favorite. I like the chickpea ones if it's a linguine, but the quinoa macaroni ones or straight ones or penne we love them. Okay,
you have to tell me your brand because I've not had good success.
I honestly think we just get them at the bulk barn in a big bin. Yeah, it's tricolored. Yeah, because we call them brown. My toddler calls them brown noodles. She freaking loves them.
Oh, yeah. They have soba noodles a fair amount.
Oh, soba noodles are another favorite. Those just work for everything. I think I could eat those all day.
Yeah. So anyway, so all of those whole grains do have more protein than the refined versions. So
which I love. I love this actually just for people in general. I'd like to point out, not just for kids, is that you don't need to be completely scared of whole grains. It is okay to consume them because they do have a lot of other nutrients in them that your body will kind of thrive off of.
Sorry, I guess I missed the memo. Why are people afraid of whole grains?
Have you been on any kind of fitness account? My whole Twitter is about.
You mean the whole lectins thing?
Not the lectin thing. More of a keto thing.
Oh, just carbs in general.
Yeah, carbs in general.
I thought you were saying people were preferring refined grains to whole grains.
No, just grains and carbs in general.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got that. Yeah.
So I don't think we need to be as scared of them as it kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the nutrition, you know this from following precision nutrition, that weight loss, in the long term, there's no difference depending on your macronutrient, basically. Like low fat, low carb, they all do the same in the long run.
Yeah. It's more about finding what works for you and just how to thrive. I'd like to point that out. I'll get into all my weight loss crazy.
Yeah, it has to be a diet that you enjoy, right?
Yeah. Don't hate everything that you put in your body or everything you do. It just doesn't make anything fun. But especially for kids, whole grains are an amazing option, which is I'm really happy to hear, to be honest, because we eat a lot of those, and a lot of those options my daughter loves. So that's great that she's getting all of her.
No, I was chatting with a girlfriend of mine who's she was telling me that she serves her daughter, she gets so upset that her daughter won't eat her egg at breakfast. And I'm, okay, well, let's talk about what your daughter will eat. Did you know that a piece of whole grain bread plus peanut butter is plenty of protein? Did you know that? It's like, I feel like there's such an opportunity to embrace whole grains and to realize that you don't have to fight with your kid to add the egg or you don't have to add protein when you've already got a whole grain base in your meal.
I love that. And it's true, because truthfully, it's not worth the fight, in all honesty. It's not a fun one.
Yeah.
And for when there's other options, it's just choose your battles, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all about reducing the stress of parenting, because I see so many, including myself, like, oh, this has to be perfect. Well, no, actually, this is definitely good enough. There is no doubt that your child can thrive on a predominantly whole grain diet. You don't have to add protein on top of that.
I think it's just a matter of, again, just having a nice variety in there, which you're going to want to do anyway, because no one wants white rice every single day for X amount of time. So as long as you're getting a variety, you'll probably hit your intake. Yeah, would be my theory. Is there any other tips?
On getting enough protein? Not really. I think that, again, really, I guess the only other tip is when we talked about, I like to flip this question on its head and say, what could you possibly do to not get enough protein? Okay, how could you not get enough? Okay, here's one way to not get enough. One way to not get enough is to only eat fruit. Because fruit is low in protein. If you only eat fruit, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't get enough. The other way is to only eat oil, because oil has no protein. So if you literally were on an all-fat diet, you probably wouldn't get enough protein.
Noted.
And maybe the other is processed foods, is highly fatty processed foods. So like fried foods, and again, if you go to McDonald's and you get French fries, like potato on its own has almost 10% protein. And depending on the potato, some actually have more. So if you only ate all potatoes, by the way, you would probably get very close to enough protein.
That's a really neat fact.
Yeah. Actually. So remember that, did you know there was a potato man, like this guy that ate potatoes only for a year?
No.
There was actually, and he has this whole diet, like potato diet, because he was like 300 pounds and he lost 200 pounds or something. I don't know what I'm just, obviously those are not the right numbers, but he lost a huge amount of weight only eating potatoes. Because potatoes actually do have, most starches are in the like 10%-ish range of protein. So he's fine for protein. But if you go and make half of that potato fat, which is what a French fry is, then you're now cutting that protein proportionally in half, right? Wow. So the raw foods of nature get you there, but when you start to have processed foods that are mostly fat, then you start to get into trouble.
Okay, noted.
Yeah.
So I think that actually about sums it up for today. Obviously, I can't thank you enough for jumping on and letting me pick your brain, although I have a zillion more questions about every other area of life for you. I do hope you will come back again at some point in time so I can keep asking you all of my questions. But for all of you that enjoyed the recording today, please, if you have further questions or just want to follow along with the tips that were provided, please check out fueledbyscience.com. Or I'll let you drop your Instagram handle too, because I adore your Instagram, and it's probably where I learn the most fun facts about everything. It's awesome to watch you and your kids kind of go through it. So on Instagram, you are
Fueled by Science.
Fueled by Science. It is
Fueled with one L. I had a big debate about that because I guess that some people spell it with two L's. But in Canada,
so weird.
I don't know if it's a Canada-US thing or a Britain thing, but there's some people that spell it with two L's. Anyways, Fueled with one L. So.
All right. Well, check her out on Instagram. And if you have any questions, please shoot off a message. I will drop as many links as I can in the show notes.
Please include a link to the article about the myth of incomplete proteins. I published it on one article on Medium, and then I also published the same article in Impact Magazine, the vegetarian Canadian
Perfect.
Magazine.
That is one of my favorite facts, to be perfectly honest. And I can still remember the day that I found that, because it's just one of those common things that you're like, well, that's not a complete protein, so yada yada. And it just made my heart swell when I learned that.
Again, that's a wonderful thing for just taking the pressure off. Like you can, if you want to have a bowl of bean soup, you don't have to have rice with it.
Well,
if
and
you want to have
especially
rice,
for
you don't
anyone,
have to have beans.
I'm not vegan, but for anyone who's entertaining the idea of vegan, I think that's where a lot of people get very, very stuck, is they think that their meals have to be so calculated
Yes,
all of the
exactly.
time because of that they're quote unquote missing a protein, and they're not, and you don't. Again, it just comes down to eating a variety of things, and you're probably going to hit your targets. So I think that's just, it's one of those stress less things.
Exactly.
Would be my biggest. So once again, I can't thank you enough for listening into the episode today. Remember, if you are in need of fitness tips, workouts, and amazingly healthy recipes, check out my website at www.fitasamamabear.com. And you can also hit up the show notes on my website to find and connect with this episode. So if you are loving what you're listening to, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast. Not only does this give helpful information to others who may not know where to find it, but it also helps me out too, so that I can keep providing you with more. And on that note, check back soon to catch the next episode of the Fit as a Mama Bear podcast. Chat soon.